welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
Hey, it's another great day to be alive. We're celebrating the Lordship of Jesus Christ, bringing His Lordship to life, which is the goal of this podcast. And that means when we start with who He is and how great He is, then that establishes our joy, our hope, our peace, and then everything else gets put in perspective. So we want you to know we're happy today, as with every day we get a chance to be with you. And we have so much, as you can see, all these wonderful notes in front of us. We have probably more to talk about than this podcast can handle. But let's put a little podcast perspective. This is Tuesday, and by the time people are digesting this, a lot of important things have happened, like a national midterm.
Right.
So just so you know, you're not going to hear much post-election discussion from us, because this is actually pre-election, just to put it in perspective.
Yeah, unless we get a prophetic word for
we are believing for the best and praying that you have voted your values, and that obviously the Lord has raised up some really, really great people to represent us. So, but before that, it has been a killer week. And we've seen some amazing things happening. Wednesday, we had our God is Greater Than Government gathering with Micah Beckwith and Christy and Marlon Stutzman and Rob McCoy, Pastor Rob McCoy. Great night of just simply talking about the critical role the church has played in public policy from the foundation of this nation, and the ongoing role that we need to play. And then I'll pass the baton to you, because Friday night we made history at Living Stone, something we had never done before.
Yeah, we had our Avada conference, and we talked about that a little bit in the past.
Yeah.
And we did a commissioning. You did a commissioning of our...
That was a blast, by the way.
Our marketplace. We call them marketplace ministers.
Yeah. We made the distinction between folks like us who are pulpit ministers, but then you have other people that are called 9 to 5, 40, 50, 60 hours a week out in the marketplace, and that what they do is just as holy and sacred and valuable as what you and I do. And so the climax of that gathering, which was really, really great, was just simply to call people forward who were willing to recognize and see that they have a holy calling to the marketplace, and to commission them, lay hands on them, pray for them.
When there's ordination of a pastor or a clergy or a missionary, there's this implicit understanding that you're giving it all. You're surrendering all for God's cause and His purpose.
Yeah.
But we call every person who's working in the marketplace to do the same. Is the call to lay your lives down is not just to the clergy; it's to every single person who follows Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and there's really more. What we're seeing in the kingdom is there's more. We have more in common than not.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you're called and you're running your own business, you're a CEO of your own business, or you're in the management of your business, or a frontline worker, wherever you are, you're called to submit your entire life to the Lord, which means your business belongs to Him, and what you do in your marketplace service and work every week belongs to the Lord. Yeah. But that's the rub. It's easy to talk about, like, well, those religious people that are called to the pastorate or whatever. But as we share in this podcast, everybody's religious. We all have a worldview that we're living for. The question is, are you willing to fully surrender your life to Jesus? Yeah. And by the way, this is probably a good plug. We're going to start a series on Sunday. I know some of you that digest this podcast aren't local, but we encourage you to go online at lstones.org and check out the new series we're going to be doing called Bringing Jesus to Work. I really, really am excited about this, and something I know you and I'll be collaborating on. But it's really drilling deeper on this whole understanding that what we do every moment of our lives is worship, service, and what was the third one? Worship, and service.
It's the same word, avada.
Yeah. So living our lives as a fragrant sacrifice to the Lord in every dimension. So, all right, well, let's jump into where we were last week. The topic last week was woke capitalism, and we're kind of going to shift this week to not only woke capitalism, but the whole rise of this surveillance capitalism. There's so much data that's being mined and collected every single day from every American who's on any kind of social media or technology, which is pretty much everybody, because that's so much a part of our lives. Yeah. And I want to backtrack just a little bit, because the whole idea of woke capitalism is corporate America has continually drifted leftward and really been taken over by a lot of social justice warriors, so much so that now they're using their economic clout to really beat people into submission with the power that they have by withholding or deplatforming. We were talking about there's certain words that we're not even able to use on this podcast because we have been punished twice, and now we're on the verge of being deplatformed. What is that all about? Well, that's woke capitalism. That means if we don't really have free speech in these types of worlds, you have speech that has to fit a certain speech code, and if you go off the speech code, you get punished. And that's what that in an essence is woke capitalism. It is capitalism that has shifted way to the progressive left, and people that now use that clout to beat you into submission, or at worst, okay, just simply to silence you. You might not agree with them, but you're just not going to express your disagreement publicly, at least not on their platform or at their business or whatever. Right. So we had a couple of great examples here. Oh, they're actually terrible examples, but we need to highlight them. This was interesting. Penguin Random House. Fortunately, they rejected a demand to cancel a book deal with Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett after 700 employees, raised a stink about the fact that she was actually writing a book, which, again, that's called freedom of speech, right? It's amazing to me that she is a sitting Supreme Court justice, a female, but because of her view on the Dobbs case, which of course was getting rid of Roe v. Wade at the federal level, all of these people who are committed to no censorship and freedom of speech, right, are coming against her and wanting to cancel this book deal, which again attacks her economic freedom, it attacks her freedom of speech as an American. This is an incredibly talented woman. Her only crime is that she simply holds a different view on the abortion issue. And fortunately, the company pushed back, but not without a whole lot of fight against her. And the irony of this, I preached on this Sunday, the irony of the left is the very thing that they accuse us of, they actually do. So they accuse Christians of censoring books. Well, what kind of books do we want to censor? Well, how about books that are sexually inappropriate or explicit or perverted, like in public libraries where children might access them, or books that are explicit in our public schools? They call that censorship. We call that parenting. But this is a blatant example of censorship because this is a book written by a Supreme Court justice who is incredibly bright and talented and worthy of hearing her opinion on things. Right. But just because of her political stance on this particular issue or her legal stance, boom, cancel. That's woke capitalism.
It's censorship based on ideas. It's based on, it's not pictures, it's not graphic, it's based on ideas, value, ideology. And basically, that's what censorship is you can only align with a certain way of thinking,
So I can't get my book published if you disagree with what my book says. Right. That's a scary place to be. And that's exactly where progressivism and left-thinking ideology takes you.
It's just interesting because, like fascism has been used to hit everybody. And everyone call everyone else fascism. Like
mostly people on the right.
Yeah, well, but what is fascism but this idea that you don't get to have your own ideas and you got to align with whatever the narrative ideas is. So that's kind of where we're at.
So here's another one. This brings it a little bit closer to home. This past summer when Governor Eric Holcomb signed legislation outlawing abortion in the state, a major pharmaceutical company, Eli Lilly, which of course we know very well, stated, here's a quote, "Given this new law, we will be forced," I don't know who's forcing them, "will be forced to plan for more employment growth outside of our home state, and that the law will again, quote, hinder Lilly's and Indiana's ability to attract diverse scientific, engineering, and business talent from around the world." Now, somehow connect with me the idea that not allowing abortion in Indiana is somehow going to destroy Eli Lilly's employment base and all the best and brightest minds are going to somehow leave, and that this law is forcing Eli Lilly's hand to leave the state. This is like a broken record of woke capitalism.
Implicit in that document is the best and brightest all share one type of value. The right side of history value That's what they're implicitly saying you're rejecting all the elitists. I mean, that statement is so elite in itself.
It's suggesting that only smart people, scientific, engineering, business people, they all are pro-abortion, and so none of them are going to come.
They're so scientific, they're beyond this whole a relic of traditional thinking. And basically, we're shooing them all away, and you Neanderthals, rest of Indiana.
So this is like the passive aggressive form of woke capitalism, right? You're forcing us to leave. No one's forcing you to do anything. Grow up, you know. Yeah. But it's passive aggressive. Oh, we're gonna have to leave because you guys are destroying our business.
How about I know we might be jumping. How about you have to leave because your state government is imposing crazy tax, overburdened taxes, and not stopping rampant crime in some of these other cities. Those are the business that's legitimately leaving and moving to like Florida, Indiana. So,
well, you bring up a nasty little point that we all realize is true. So here's the deal. What was funny is after this big blustery, you're forcing us to leave. You're going to destroy the economy. Eli Lilly's going to go under. What's funny is, they completely backpedaled, and they announced a $92.5 million investment in Purdue University to keep the state's, quote, best and brightest in Indiana, and to expand Eli Lilly's impact on a global scale. Now, what are you going to do? Are you leaving? Are you staying? Are you not going to invest? Are you forced not to invest? We're not going to be able to attract the best and the brightest, but now you just put a $92 million investment to attract the best and the brightest at Purdue. I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it too. What side of the issue are you on?
I just want to ask, where are the business moving out of? And what kind of states are business moving into? I won't answer that question for you. But
I'll answer it because it's right here. Hey, that was a good lead. Give me 5 on that one. All right. States like California, Illinois, and New York that continue to promote abortion at all costs are not friendly states to do business in, and are also states that are continuing to see population declines. I would just say population departures on the mass scale. I mean, we've seen this in Northwest Indiana. Illinois is blessing us like crazy. We're seeing a mass exodus.
Driving housing costs way up. So,
well, we're having to rebuild and expand all of our schools. My point is simply this:
we live on the edge of Indiana.
There is a mass exodus.
Yeah.
And places on the borders of these kinds of states are experiencing significant growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
When people leave and vote with their feet.
Right.
I've never understood this. You tax successful businesses at a higher level, and you say, you got to pay your due. Tax. These people are not stupid. Why would they stay in a state that's going to steal their money? Politicians that are going to steal their money and shame them for being successful.
And when you let crime go rampant and then people can just break into your stores, I hang out business owners all the time. That's unsustainable. That's the last thing they want to deal with of all the things spending on the business owner's plate.
Or how about when you tell people, we're going to set a threshold for how much you can steal, and we won't stop you if you steal under this amount. And you got people walking out with sacks.
So where should I build my infrastructure for my business?
Where should I make a lifetime investment? Yeah. So we just got to expose all this stupidity but again, this is Eli Lilly through woke capitalism threatening the people of Indiana. Because last time I checked again, we have a representative form of government. Who passed this law? It was the majority of people in Indiana who don't want abortion on demand in Indiana. Right. So they're insulting the population of Indiana, the citizens of Indiana, and yet they want to stay here and prosper based on our good laws, our conservative values, and everything else.
I want the cake and eat it. So
yeah. And this one really gets me. And I'm sharing this because you all need to be aware. If they're doing this to the people that we're going to read about here, they will absolutely do it to you in a heartbeat. This was your bank account has been canceled. Christian organizations lose basic services. Now, many of you know former Senator Sam Brownback. He was senator of this great state of Kansas. He is also former U.S. ambassador at large for religious freedom. He went to J.P. Morgan Chase That's where they do their banking for the National Committee for Religious Freedom. And let me just mention, religious freedom is not something that's just a conservative or a Christian freedom. This applies to everybody, every single human being on planet Earth. Everybody benefits from religious freedom. This is not controversial. But evidently it is, because here's what happened. When he went to make his first deposit at the bank, he got some startling news. Someone in high finance decided that religious freedom advocates did not deserve to have access to basic financial services. They said, your bank account has been canceled. We'll be sending back your funds. That's it. That's all that he got. And after repeated efforts, and I've heard this numerous times from people this happened to, they're first of all, they're shocked. They go, what? Who do I talk to? Because they're talking to a basic frontline teller or somebody that doesn't have the authority. So when they try to go up the food chain, here's what happened. They were told, well, the decision was made at the corporate level. It's secret. We're not going to tell you about it, and it's irrevocable. That's it. Goodbye. And when I actually talked to one bank employee, she told them that a note in the file read that Chase employees were not permitted to provide any clarifying information to the customer. Now imagine this, you're a customer in good standing. You in a sense have a covenant with the bank, right? They do their services, you do yours, and you have this working contract, right? All of a sudden, with no explanation necessary, you're just shut down. You cannot do any of your business transactions at that bank. And then you try to go to another bank, but the memo's been released. Somebody higher up has told bank X, Y, and Z that somehow you're toxic, and now your entire life is shut down. Because as we talked about last time we were together, so much of our world today is electronic. Mm-hmm. And somebody who it remains anonymous, and we just mentioned it's not really a secret because this is ideologically based.
We all know why. But I mean, that has happened to the Benham brothers.
Yep.
We saw what PayPal did to, not PayPal, I'm sorry. Well, PayPal's all involved in that. Yep. Whatever GoFundMe did to the Canadian truckers.
Yep.
Which was really egregious.
Well, and look at this. This really, to me, was over the top. I mean, think about a bank asking somebody for this information. Chase later said, after they kept going after them and after them and after them for answers, that they, quote, would be willing to reconsider doing business if we, this group, would provide our donor list, a list of political candidates that we intended to support, and full explanation of the criteria by which we would endorse and support these candidates. I mean, this is a political witch hunt, and this is woke capitalism at its finest. This is, we share a different political view, and we're going to absolutely punish you. Give us your donors' names, because I'm sure what's going to happen, we will cancel them too. And this is like, we talked about soft totalitarianism. This borders on crossing the line to hard totalitarian. This is like something a communist dictator would do to people who were dissidents, you know?
Right.
I mean, it's that to me is terrifying.
So, I mean, with our greater dependence on financial institutions, financial transactions, Samsung Wallet, Apple Wallet, PayPal, all these different things. I mean, we're giving all kind of we are entangling ourselves with all kind of electrical Silicon Valley financial institutions.
Yep.
And I think we just need to be aware of what's going on. I'm not saying you need to go and just go off grid,
right?
Because I'm not saying that's practical. I certainly have no idea how I would do that. But I think we just need to be aware of these entanglements and the control that you are subtly allowing that into your every part of your life.
And I want to press this because we do need to say, well, what's our takeaway on here? I think there's some good discussion, but I just want to share one more thing.
Yeah.
The left and woke ideology in general has never passed the public market of support enough to be actually properly legislated by the majority of people and their representatives. So we saw this for years. This is why we have woke courts. We have the left pushing their agenda through by leftist judges. Mm-hmm. And we have all kinds of judicial activism where the court ends up making laws that doesn't exist or ruling on things that they really have no authority to rule because the law is already clear. But if they can't do it that way, they use corporate thuggery. Now, we're all going to know these names because these are the Marxists that are actually serving in the United States government. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York, Rashida Tlaib from Michigan, Ayanna Pressley from Massachusetts. They are using their membership in the House Financial Services Committee to cajole banks into curtailing business with fossil fuel companies, firearms, and this one is interesting, private organizations that build illegal immigrant detention centers. They view this tactic as a substitute for their inability to enact their socialistic policies through the democratic process. And this is what AOC told Politico. She said, quote, "There's more than one way to skin a cat, and not everything has to be done through legislation explicitly." Wow, what a telling statement. So if we can't get people to vote for something, and if we can't convince the public that the policy is good, we'll just use Marxist tactics. We'll use woke capitalism. We will threaten banks to not do business with, for instance, firearm companies. Are you kidding me? Last time I checked, we're Americans, and we have the Second Amendment. How in the world does an elected official representing the United States of America strong-arm banks into not doing business with firearms companies who are doing something completely legal in this country? And just because you might not like the Second Amendment does not give you the ability to trample the rights and liberties of others or to punish. What they're trying to do through all of this is destroy people who are ammunition dealers and arms manufacturers. Who gives them the right to do that? This should be illegal. You don't have the right to destroy somebody's business.
Well, they're playing for broke. I mean, they're sometimes I feel like the Marxists they're playing for keeps. Whereas sometimes on the Republican side, we're all trying to be genteel and like civil, and these guys are just like, we're gonna do whatever it takes. There's no rules. There's no guidelines. We're gonna use whatever resource we have to get the job done. You know.
Yeah. So maybe this is a good transition. Yeah. And you brought up some really good points. So what are we trying to tell our viewers? We're not going to just sit here and whine for 35 minutes or 40 minutes. What's the point? And so here's the first thing. All of these technological, advances, like we were talking about today, the products that we use that are so much a part of our culture. For instance, he says young people cannot effectively function in society if blocked from using Facebook, Twitter, Gmail, Uber, Amazon, PayPal, Venmo, and other financial transaction systems. I mean, I'm a first-hand experiencer of all this because at my house, there's almost not a day that goes by with a house full of, big family, that someone's not dropping off a package at my doorstep. Sure. Now, this was completely foreign. This is not the way I grew up. You can even have groceries dropped off at your house now.
Right.
Now, I kept thinking, that's never going to go over. Who wants groceries dropped off at their house? That's because that's my generation. Or I kept thinking, people online, I would never buy a shirt online. I want to go feel what material it is. I want to see it. I want to try it on. I would never buy a shirt online. Everybody's buying shirts online.
They don't like it, they'll just return it.
Yeah, but I never thought that any of that would catch on because I'm a different generation. Yeah. This is the way the younger generation lives. And there's nothing the matter with it. It's technology. And as a pastor, I guess I've always felt like it is very short-sighted to try to fight the tide of technology. In other words, it's not technology that's bad. It's how it's used. And it doesn't make much sense for me as a pastor, for instance, to stand in the pulpit and tell people, hey, all that data online that you're giving to these companies can be used against you. Okay, well, that's true. But what's the option? Are you going to throw your phone in the river? You're not going to use credit cards. Yeah. People are not going to change the way that they're living, even though much of this smartphone or smart technology is, like we talked about last week, it's gathering all kinds of data about our lives. Yeah. And all of that data is owned by the government, and if put in the wrong hands, will most certainly be used against you. Right. So what's our solution, Pastor?
Yeah, I don't have the crazy solution. I think there's some practical things to think about. I think this is not either or. This is there's a multiple levels to this. Again, I use Amazon to buy packages and stuff like that.
I get all my books, off
I use
Kindle.
Audible and technology. I think first we just need to be aware of the entanglement of technology. We don't want to be in a place. We got to be aware of the place. I mentioned it's like that Pixar cartoon. Wall-E.
Wall-E, yeah.
Which, it seems as the cartoon is about a bunch of cute robots. It's not. It's about human dependence on technology and what that produces in us. And sometimes we just need to go out into nature and play and be detached from technology. Yeah. That's what that movie, at least in my interpretation, what that movie is really about. And we got to be careful, be aware of our entanglement so that technology doesn't become a soft idol. Yeah. It becomes a tool. It's a tool for us, and now, especially for followers of Jesus Christ. And we got to make sure we worship Jesus, not technology. Now, am I like anti-technology? No, I'm not. We use technology. We use technology in our churches. We use our technology, but it's a tool. It is not something. We got to be careful of our entanglement and dependency on technology. Just be aware of that. Yeah. But the second thing I would just be it's something that we're working on a lot. Is what we call parallel economies. Yeah. With the banking situation, hey, you know what? I use big banks also, but I also have a few small banks I work with. And some of the counsel I have is go to your local bank that your banker, your bank manager. We got to meet our banker here for Livingstone's Church. Yeah. We got to meet their vice president. We got to talk to them face to face. They're believers.
And they are faith-based banking institution. Again, when you look at where many of these banks invest their money in terms of charitable things, it is a horror list of leftist agenda causes, especially these major banks. And so on one level, I don't want to put my money in a bank that I know, for instance, is promoting abortion on demand everywhere they go. I don't want to go to certain coffee places. I won't mention any names, but there's certain places I will not buy a cup of coffee because I know the leftist agenda that profit is going to support. So creating a parallel economy, as you said, in other words, we need Christians to get together and start banks that are committed to the glory of God and to blessing people.
But there have been parallel technology platform that's been created, parallel informational system, parallel infrastructure. Yeah. They have been, and Elon Musk with the whole Twitter situation. I mean, there is a trend moving that way. So, first of all, business owners, this is what we talk about in the kingdom, in the Avada conference, is to create, we're not trying to create a parallel, we're just trying to create a kingdom which becomes a parallel economy to what the world economy is.
For instance, if you're in a school district that is pushing all kinds of leftist, dangerous ideology, pull your kids and create a homeschool or a Christian
co-op
school.
Or a co-op. Or charter school or homeschool.
And then we stay involved governmentally because we should be sick and tired of having double pay. We're paying for public schools with our taxes, and then the public schools in many liberal areas insult our values, and then they tell us if you don't like it, you can take your kid out. Right. Okay, well that's nice, but you're keeping my money, and then I have to pay again a second time to put my kid in a private school or a Christian school that's not going to attack my values. That's wrong. My tax dollars should follow me, but we got to work to getting these things into our legislatures, into our law.
Creating parallel infrastructure takes decades.
Yeah, it's not quick.
But it's already started, and I think we need to continue to create ourselves. We need to invest in it. Parallel. You talk about how about create a coffee shop that that promotes kingdom values. Parallel restaurants, parallel all these different things.
In other words, don't complain, don't whine. Create,
and then and if you're not the creative type and you're not the entrepreneur type. Well, invest in those. Yep. When I say invest, I don't mean just like invest in a business. Go and patronize those restaurants or patronize those technology companies and use those. And they might not be as great as the established one for now, but you're investing for the future. And those are all things we need to be thinking about.
And we applaud people. This is amazing. Back to the wokeness, all right? Yeah. So Elon Musk, when we were being canceled and deplatformed, right, off of Twitter, they basically said, you don't like it, go somewhere else, private company. Yeah. Like, stinks to be you, so what? Now a private citizen buys it and basically opens up free speech. And did you see the list of major corporations that are boycotting Twitter now? That's an example of, as far as advertising, that's an example of woke capitalism again. What has he done wrong? All he did was open the playing field again. But here's what he did wrong. He is allowing a difference of opinion, a difference of ideas that goes against all the woke ideology.
The narrative.
And so now again, we haven't silenced the people that we want to silence. We're actually letting them have a platform to speak and to push back and to challenge some of these ideologies, and they don't like it. So it's amazing to me. We're going to now punish a private business that simply is opening up the playing field. It highlights exactly what we're talking about, and you would recognize every one of these companies. They're major
So
players.
he did release all the companies that pulled out advertising.
Yep.
Yeah,
There's probably 15 or so. Major corporations in America.
And he probably should have seen it coming. I mean, he's a smart guy.
Well, what are they trying to do? They're trying to destroy him.
Yeah,
we're going to remove your funding. And we want to destroy you. No, I don't think
it's
you
just
will.
It's just a little harder to destroy the richest person in the world.
Yeah.
Economic, and this is where we get into these things, and that's why again, like we have to create those financial engines. We got to create those systems. Elon Musk, why is he more insulated against that type of attack? Because he has infrastructures and Tesla and SpaceX and all these other things in place, and we got to create these infrastructure. And the last thing I will say is it's obvious. We got to elect righteous people. See, it's interesting because in many ways, why are they going through all these corporate venues for censorship? Because they're private, they are exempt from some of the governmental restrictions for free speech. So they're like, well, we're private, we can do whatever we want.
Yep.
But there's still government oversight, and there's still legislature to kind of level the playing ground, like kind of like what's happening right here. And we got to elect righteous people.
And this is a great way to end. Of course, again, we just had it. By the time you hear this, you'll know the results of the election. But many pollsters are predicting a red wave because Americans, the run-of-the-mill American, is fed up with what's happened and ready for change. This is interesting. This article is called "Here Comes the Shun." S-H-U-N. GOP urged to snub woke companies after the midterms. This person reminds conservatives, elected officials, these companies have colluded with the Biden administration to silence conservative voices. They promoted lies about voter ID and chose not to support conservatives who stand for fair elections. They are paying for travel costs for employee abortions, including late term, subsidized by their customers. Now think about that. What if you're a Christian, you're working for a company, and they come out and say, look, we'll fly you from another state into our state. We'll pay for your abortion with our corporate money. I mean, talk about insulting to people who have different values. A majority, they said, of which customers stand for life. They're promoting radical gender theory, gender modification onto our children. They supported anti-police BLM movement that wreaked havoc on our streets and in our neighborhoods across the country and has contributed to a spike in violent crime. They're saying, the conservative gets elected, they're now senator, they're now a congressman or congresswoman, and what happens? All of these companies now want to cozy up and partner with you and come alongside. And he's saying, wake up. These folks do not have our interest in mind. There's only one way to send a message, and that's by playing hardball back. Like, you will not promote your woke ideology upon the American people. You're not going to deplatform. You're not going to bully. You're not going to do all the things that you used to do. And if you'll continue to do that, we won't do business with you, or we'll pass legislation to reel you in. So anyway, this is all the stuff that I love about a Christian worldview. It's like we're not fatalists. We can get involved. We can run for office. We can support candidates. We can speak the truth. We can do a lot of things. We can start businesses, start schools, start banks, and we can win, and we will win if we get involved, and that's the good news.
We are winning.
Yeah, that's the good news. So I hope this is helpful. I had one gentleman come up to me. He says, I love watching the podcast. He said, what you guys are talking about is like happening right now. I mean, and I hope you all see that. Like, the topics we're hitting right now could not be more relevant. This is just what I pulled off within the last 2 weeks on the internet dealing with these issues, and there's articles galore. So everything we're talking about in woke capitalism and the surveillance capitalism is everywhere around us. We've got to be wise. We've got to be engaged, and we just have to be vigilant. That's the price for freedom. So hopefully we'll have some great news to talk about next Thursday when we get together. Well, of course, we'll have great news, but hopefully we'll be able to have a little election processing as well. So until then, have a great week, and we look forward to being with you next Thursday.